All right, welcome. We are going over the Saturnine refit, a historiography of global structural revision 2040 through 2045 through the lens of Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. All right, by the ICS, if you've seen my other videos. And this is the Department of Historical Cartography, Cycles of Revision, midterm paper, example. And here's the thing about me. My goal in life, my ultimate goal, is to be a professor. Of what? Of advanced astrology. And people can laugh, people can joke and think it's funny. And there's other people that are going to understand and will make it happen. So for now, keep it real with me, keep it real with your girl. Professor Piscean here of advanced astrology. Now let's take a look at this. This paper employs the ICS retrograde historiography model to analyze the turbulent 5-year period of 2040 through 2045, a watershed era immediately following the Great Simplification, by isolating and examining the consecutive Saturn retrograde cycles in Aquarius, April through September 2040, 2041, 2042, and 2043. This study argues that these periods weren't random crises, but constituted a deliberate, cosmic mandated refit of humanity's collective structures, Saturn, around principles of network logic, decentralized technology, and group consciousness, Aquarius. Using the synthesized archetypal language, SAL, this analysis demonstrates how each retrograde phase systematically exposed flaws in emerging post-collapse systems, forcing revisions that ultimately enabled the stabilization of the planetary noosphere and set the precondition for the Kappa Reticuli first contact. This paper contends that Saturn retrograde in a fixed air sign functions as the primary celestial mechanism for the stress testing and iterative hardening of societal architectures. Now keep up with me. We'll go through the introduction. The post-simplification crucible. The decade following the Great Simplification, circa 2035 through 2045, is often narrated as a chaotic, fragmented scramble for new political and technological order. Traditional historiography cites resource depletion, climate migration, and the collapse of legacy institutions as primary drivers. This paper applies a novel lens, the cyclical, reviewing function of Saturn retrograde. With Saturn transiting Aquarius from 2038 to 2046, its annual retrograde periods became predictable, potent intervals for the collective re-evaluation of all structures built upon Aquarian principles: digital networks, decentralized governance, scientific ethics, and collective humanitarian ideals. The thesis is that the Saturn and Aquarius retrograde cycles between 2040 through 1943 acted as a 4-act evolutionary pressure system, each forcing a critical revision that progressively transformed humanity's approach to structure from a Capricornian model of top-down hierarchy to an Aquarian model of resonant nodal integrity. Methodology. The ICS retrograde historiography framework. This analysis utilizes the 3-phase model established in HST 450. Identification and isolation, pinpointing the exact retrograde windows, pre-shadow, retrograde, post-direct for Saturn and Aquarius for each year from 2040 through 1943 using the ICS mundane ephemeris. SAL translation and hypothesis, translating Saturn retrograde in Aquarius into the synthesized archetypal language, the principle of structure, limitation, and time. Saturn enters a phase of internal review, revision, and recontracting. Retrograde within the domain of the network, the collective, and radical innovation. Aquarius. Historical event correlation and narrative weaving, scrutinizing major geopolitical, technological, and noospheric events within each phase to construct a coherent narrative of structured revision. Sources include declassified GIC briefs, noospheric resonance logs from the period, and the ICS historical event database. Analysis. The 4-act Saturnine refit, 2040 through 1943. Act 1. The foundation cracks. Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, April 12th through September 4th, 2040. Pre-shadow, February 2040. The Icarus Array, a global decentralized energy grid. A quintessential Aquarian project goes live amid great optimism. Grape. Your girl wants some grapes. Retrograde phase, April through September 2040. Systemic vulnerabilities are exposed. In June 2040, a cascading failure in the array's algorithmic governance. Saturn equals structure. Aquarius equals algorithm. Triggers a 3-continent blackout. The crisis isn't one of supply, but of structural coordination. Simultaneously, the Cairo Consensus, a new model for fluid national borders, faces its first major refugee test and fractures. Post-direct resolution, late 2040, the Icarus Array is not abandoned but recontracted. A more robust hierarchical oversight model is implemented. The Cairo Consensus is revised with clearer Saturnine rules for crisis response. The lesson: Aquarian ideals require Saturnine skeletons. Keep that in mind. Aquarian ideals require Saturnine skeletons. Let's get at 2. Which is the data sovereignty crisis, Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, April 28th through September 22nd, 2041, pre-shadow, March 2041, widespread adoption of mind web interfaces promising seamless collective thought, Aquarius, retrograde phase, April through September 2041, the memory drought occurs. A flaw in the planetary data lake architecture leads to the corrupt, non-localized loss of petabytes of cultural memory. Society confronts the fragility of its new cognitive foundation. Who owns or is responsible for Saturn collective memory? Aquarius. We look at our post-direct resolution. 2041 through 42, the Galileo protocols are established, a Saturnine legal and architectural framework for noospheric data integrity, ownership, and access. This creates the first stable layer of digital common law. Act 3, the ethics of the new. Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, May 14th through October 7th, 2042. Pre-shadow, March 2042. Breakthroughs in germline gene editing and geoengineering are hailed as Aquarian triumphs over biological and climatic fate. Retrograde phase, May through October 2042, the Helix controversy. A research collective releases a gene drive for malaria eradication without planetary consensus. A global debate erupts not on the science, but on the structural authority to make such species-level decisions. Saturn asks, what are the limits? Post-direct resolution by 2043, the Geneva Oversight Compact is formed. It is not a banning body, but a Saturnine structure for auditing, pacing, and ethically staging radical Aquarian technologies. Innovation is preserved, but girded with responsibility. Act 4, stress testing the noosphere. Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, May 25th through October 18th, 1943. Pre-shadow, April 2043. The noosphere is considered a stable emergent fact. Say this is our retrograde phase, May through October 1943. Silent scream incident, a localized traumatic psychic imprint from a conflict zone, begins replicating virally through the noosphere, causing panic and psychic nausea. The structure of the noosphere itself is shown to be vulnerable to psychic pathogens. Really quick, I think we slipped up here. I meant to say 2043. So that is the thing with using AI. It will make mistakes. Post-direct resolution 2044. The ICS in protoform develops the first noospheric hygiene protocols. Saturnine discipline of collective psychic maintenance, resonance shielding, and trauma integration. This is the final crucial refit, applying structure to consciousness itself. Our synthesis and conclusion, the sequence from 2040 through 2043, reveals a clear archetypal progression from revising physical and political networks to data and memory structures to ethical and biological frameworks, and finally to the structures of consciousness. Each Saturn retrograde in Aquarius didn't destroy the Aquarian future, it iteratively hardened it. By forcing an annual review and revision cycle, these retrogrades ensured that the emerging Aquarian age was built not on naive utopianism, but on stress-tested, responsible architecture. This historiography demonstrates that the chaos of the period wasn't random but cyclically purposeful. Saturnine retrogrades were the cosmic quality assurance mechanism for humanity's next evolutionary state. Step. The stability required for first contact in 2058 was not a happy accident. It was forged in the repeated fires of these Saturn and Aquarius retrograde cycles. This analysis validates the ICS retrograde historiography model as a powerful tool for discerning the intentional texture of time, revealing that planetary cycles are less predictors of events than they are architects of evolutionary resilience. Alright. We'll see you in the next video where I'm going over xenocartography and exo-civilization analysis division, applied exo-archetypal dissection, with our core innovation being the quantum civilizational matrix, QCM, a framework for analyzing any conscious civilization regardless of its biological, energetic, or computational substrate through a synthesized astrological lens. This protocol treats a civilization's birth chart and the individual being charts of its constituents as entangled expressions of a single evolutionary waveform. Subscribe, like, comment. We'll see you there. Piscean out.